One day you're going to die. And before you die, a lot of people that you love are going to die. And I'm not saying that to be morbid, but I'm saying it because it's true. And it's something that I feel needs to be normalized because it's literally the only guarantee in life is that we're going to die. And I feel like it's really important when we're experiencing the death or the illness of a loved one that we have some tools and resources to help us cope and get through it. So, disclaimer, I had no intentions of recording this video today, and everything I'm about to say is coming directly from the heart because I just feel called to record this and to share something that's been on my mind in the hope that it may help anyone who's going through a similar situation. Now, this is a topic that I have written articles about. It inspired my TEDx talk, and I'm working on an ebook actually to talk about the same thing. Before we get into today's topic, if you have not subscribed to my channel, I highly encourage you to do so. It would warm my heart and mean so much to me. If you find value in this video, please like it, comment, share, and spread the word because everyone is going to have to deal with what I'm about to share at some point to different degrees, but it's going to affect everybody. So if you follow my content, then you probably know that my mother has been battling a very rare and difficult terminal illness. So for a little background, she was diagnosed in, I think, 2017 or 2018 with a very rare lung infection called MAC. And that was scary at the time, but it wasn't considered terminal, meaning there were treatment options. She was undergoing medication and medical intervention, and she was seeing a doctor, and she had a protocol, and she actually got rid of the infection for a period of time, and then it came back. And then in 2022, she was told that it had progressed to something called abscessus and that it was now considered a terminal illness, which means that there's nothing else they can do. And they said, okay, it's probably a matter of months. And so I have learned so much from this experience because I'm very close to my mom, and my family has been a top priority for me, especially in the last few years. And it's been the most difficult period of my life. Hopefully, it'll be the most difficult thing I ever have to go through. And it's really taught me a lot about how to live. And so I wanted to share some of my insights, both for people who are in a similar situation, as well as maybe people who aren't, but just want a new perspective on life. Because when we start to really think about death a lot, it does change the way we live. And that part can be very beautiful. So if you are experiencing a loved one who's been given a terminal or chronic illness diagnosis, there are a few things that I recommend to help get through it. And so I'll just share some things that were helpful for me to get through it and continue to be helpful for me. I think what's been particularly challenging in my case, and also particularly informative, is that it's been going on for so long. So a lot of people, they're told they have a few months and that's it. They have a few months and then it's over. And my mom has been on hospice for over a year and a half. And if you're not familiar, hospice is when they stop medical intervention and you have nurses that come to your home with the sole intention of making your life comfortable. Their goal is palliative care, which means keeping patients comfortable in their final days. Normally that only lasts a few weeks, but my mom has been on hospice for, like I said, a year and a half. And it's so beautiful that we get all this time together, and it's very, very challenging. I haven't been able to fully relax in a long time because in the back of my mind, it's always there. It's like that constant fear and that constant stress. And I actually moved back to my hometown when she first went on hospice a year and a half ago to be closer to her. And before that, it was really challenging because I was a 6-hour drive away. And so, yes, I had my freedom, I had my life. And every time she was sick, it would totally ruin like my whole day. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how to navigate that too. But it was stressful being far away. And now that I'm here, it's stressful for other reasons. I'm so grateful that I'm here and I'm close to her and I get to see her every day. And that comes at the expense of my freedom in a way and me having a life that's not centered around that. And I don't regret it at all. I'm very happy with the decision that I made. I know that I'll never regret this time I get to spend with her. And it has a lot of challenges. And the more I share about my story, the more people come up to me and say, I've been a caretaker too. It's hard. And so that's why I'm going on about this and why I created this video, is to give you some pointers, hopefully based on the very long time that I've had in this situation. And since being in this situation, I've had friends that their parents will get diagnosed with something and they'll say, oh my gosh. Like, I had one friend in particular, her mother was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she was like, I didn't realize you've been going through this for so many years. Like, this is really hard. And it was really nice to have someone to talk to who kind of understands the situation. So the older I get, the more people like that I meet. My mom first got sick when I was in my mid-20s, so I was pretty young. And my brother is still in his 20s, and that's young. It's to deal with this kind of stuff. So anyway, the first consideration I want to share, and I'll just also say that I did I did post a video with 10 quick tips of how to navigate a dying loved one that I'll link to in the description. It'll pop up on your screen if you want to watch that. It's basically a condensed version of everything I'm going to go through, but some new things might come out today because, like I said, I'm just speaking off the cuff. So one of the biggest challenges is no one knows what to say. People feel really awkward when they find out that your loved one is sick. I think often about being in elementary school and you find out there's a girl whose dad has cancer. And now she gets known as the girl whose dad has cancer. And people kind of change their treatment of that person in a way. Not always, but that does happen. And sometimes it's good. You know, you want to be empathetic and sympathetic towards someone going through that situation. And sometimes it can create awkwardness and discomfort because people don't know how to interact around you and they don't know what you need. So for example, for me, there have been periods, since this has been going on for a really long time, I've experienced a lot of different things. And so there are periods of my life of this situation where I almost felt like that became my identity to people. Like every time I would see someone, they'd say, how's your mom? How's your mom? And it was very nice. Like on the one hand, it was very considerate. And I remembered like, wow, so-and-so always checks in and asks about my mom. And I'll tell my mom, like, Philip asks about you all the time. And it's so nice. At the same time, it's challenging because I would be going to a lot of parties and I'd show up to a party and someone would say, how's your mom? And then it's just like, I don't want to be a downer. I can't lie and say she's good if she's not. And then sometimes I would just brush it off and say like, oh yeah, everything's fine, and change the subject. And so it's really tricky for people to know what you need, because then the people that never asked about my mom, I would kind of resent them for not asking and think like, oh my gosh, they don't even care. And it's not that they don't care, it's that they didn't know what I needed. They didn't know if I wanted to talk about it. Or it's, okay, I've asked you about your mom every single time I've seen you for 6 months. I'm going to stop now. And so for a lot of people, it just got to the point where I had to tell them, like, I'll tell you about my mom if you ask about your mom, or do you not want to talk about it? And I found that really helpful is when people are very clear and open and just say like, hey, what do you need? But if you're the person in the situation with the sick loved one, I would suggest don't expect people to know what to say, because we're not taught what to say. We're not really taught how to navigate these things. And I, for a long time, was, like I said, very resentful of people. I remember times when people didn't ask about my mom, or they said the quote unquote wrong thing. And that's not fair of me to do, because they didn't know any better. And most of the time people are coming from a really good place. They're not trying to make you feel bad. but we're just not educated on how to handle these sorts of situations, hence me doing this video. So the first tip is be patient with people and be forgiving with people. And now I don't care what someone says to me. I'm just so appreciative that they're there. And if they don't ask about my mom, I'm appreciative that I get to not think about it for a little bit. And if they do ask about my mom, I'm appreciative that they're interested and curious. And so don't fault other people for not knowing how to react, because they just don't know. There were plenty of times when I would go out. There was one time, for example, when I was at a bachelorette party in Savannah, Georgia, where I was living, and my mom was in the hospital. But my mom was very insistent that I go out and live my life. She didn't want me sitting around being sad while she was sad. She's like, you're at the prime of your life. Go out, have fun. I don't want you sitting around wallowing all day because of me. That's not going to make me any better. And that was a big lesson I had to learn that we'll come back to in a moment. But one time she was in the hospital and I was at a bachelorette party and it was Taylor Swift themed. We all dressed up like a different era. It was super cool and it was fun. But when the girls found out my mom was in the hospital, this one girl who I had never met before, she was like, do you really think you should be out right now? And I don't think she meant it in a mean way. I think she meant it from a genuine, like, are you okay? Do you need time to yourself kind of way, which is totally fair. And there are plenty of times when I've canceled plans because I just needed time to myself. But it made me feel really guilty. And it felt like she was shaming me because I was like, what are you doing out? Your mom's in the hospital. And it hurt me to hear that. And by that point, I'd already dealt with it for so long that I didn't let it faze me. I was just like, you know what? No, she's 6 hours away anyway. She would want me to be out here. And I said to her, I'm pretty sure that like my mom told me to come because my mom did. Like she wanted me to be out and about enjoying my life. Which brings us to another lesson that I've learned. For a long time, and even still, sometimes I feel guilty living my life, knowing that my mom is sick. Oh my gosh, I'm about to cry. Because when you really care about someone, you just want to be there for them, right? You just want to do everything you can. And when she was first diagnosed, I was living in New York City, and that was really far, but I would come home when I could, and then I was living in Savannah, and then I would come home as much as I could, and now I live in Florida, where my parents live. But I would feel really guilty having fun and having a good time because my mom was suffering so much. But eventually, I had to realize, because my mom loves me, and she wants what's best for me. And so she would constantly say, like, please go live your life. Like, don't be sad about this. She wanted me to be sad, obviously, because, you know, you don't want to, like, go throw a party like, hey, my mom's sick. But at the same time, I'm her daughter. And she wants me to be happy. So just because your loved one is sick doesn't mean your life has to end. If anything, that would really upset them. Like, can you imagine if it were you and you're in the hospital? Yeah, of course you want visitors, but would you really want to know that everyone you loved and cared about deeply, their whole day was ruined because of you and their whole week was ruined because of you? Like, you don't want that. If you genuinely care about someone, you want them to be happy. So that's been a tough lesson, but I just have to constantly remind myself of that no, my mom wants me to be happy. She wants me to thrive. She doesn't want my life to end because hers might. And I think that's very true when someone passes away. When someone that we love passes away, we don't have to end our lives because theirs did. They have their own life and you have yours. And that has been really challenging and complicated to navigate as a daughter who's very close to her mother. Some people may not be as close to their parents, so maybe this doesn't affect you as much, but But for me, it's like there's a certain level of enmeshment that I feel like, I'm losing part of myself. And so it's hard. It's hard to fully enjoy anything knowing that she's sick. Which brings us to another point, which is that she's sick, but she's alive. So the biggest game changer for me in terms of how I deal with the stress is to remember that it's not healthy to mourn the future. I cannot mourn the future. This is a conclusion I came to on my own one day. I remember it very well. I was at my house in Savannah and I was just like having a big breakdown, and then I had to just be like, stop. Like, I would sit there and visualize the funeral and cry so hard and I did that enough times that eventually I was like, stop it. Like, that's not happening right now. Be present. One day I will have the entire rest of my life to mourn and to grieve and to be sad. But right now, my mom's still alive. And it's different. It's different when someone's sick. They're not the same person. My mom can't even leave the house at this point. But I can still talk to her in very limited ways, and things are very different, but she's still alive. So I can grieve the past. I can grieve the things that I've already lost and just her not being able to show up the way that she used to. But I don't have to mourn something that hasn't happened yet. Yes, we can prepare. So we were just talking this morning about where she wants her funeral luncheon, and we've planned all of that stuff. My parents have their affairs in order, like all the financial stuff, all that's situated, which I recommend. If you're an older adult and you have children, buy your funeral plots, your cemetery plots, or cremation services, or whatever it is you're going to do. Prepare that so that your children don't have to. I'm very grateful that my parents have already done all of that stuff, but I digress. So the point is that we have to stay present. We have to enjoy what we have. And that's true for anything in life. Like, so much of our stress is us mourning something that hasn't happened yet or dwelling on something from the past. And if we just stay present and we're here now, we can feel the feelings and the emotions of sadness and fear, but we can also transform that into gratitude for the present moment, because I'll never get this time back, but I'll be able to grieve the funeral for the rest of my life after it happens, so I don't need to think about it now. And that was a huge shift for me. And obviously I'm not perfect, and there are still times when my mind goes there, and I just have to constantly snap myself out of it. But I've gotten a lot better at being present and just trusting that day will come, but it's not here yet. Thank goodness. So I mentioned before that sometimes other people aren't going to know what to say, and that's okay. The other thing that has been really challenging is you're not going to know what to say to your sick loved one. I have said the wrong thing to my mom so many times, and unintentionally. It would be things like I didn't know what she needed. It's like, you try to say something encouraging, for example, like, oh yeah, you're going to be walking soon. And then it just makes her feel bad. She's like, I'm never going to walk again in my life. Or you try to be practical and say something like, yeah, well, I don't remember if this is an actual example, but for example, if you're talking about a time when that person won't be there anymore, like, oh, well, I'll have so-and-so to keep me company. And then she's like, don't kill me off yet. Things like that. Like, it's very delicate. And I can't think of any specific examples right now because I don't think that's happened for me in a while, because this was more when we first got the prognosis. I know that I was talking to a friend who had lost his father, and I was telling my mom, like, oh yeah, I had this conversation and it was super helpful for me, and he lost his father, so we had a lot to talk about. And she was like, don't bury me yet, like, I'm not dead yet. And then I felt so bad for telling her that. And then other times people try to be encouraging, or I try to encourage her, and then she'll be like so discouraged, and she's like, that's not possible. And so it's a really fine line to balance between encouraging someone to, you can do it, and acknowledging like you're really suffering. So my advice there is be patient with yourself and be self-compassionate. So talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. Don't resent yourself for not knowing what to say, and really try to foster as much open communication as you can. Ask your loved one what they need. Like, do you want me to cheer you on? Do you want me to do this, or would you rather I don't? And some of that is hard for them to talk about, and they may not know what they need. So don't put pressure on them to have an exact answer. Well, one thing I've really learned is observe other people and how they interact with your loved one, and then observe how your loved one responds to them. So that's basically, now that I'm thinking about how I've learned what and what not to say to my mom, is listening to how she talks about what other people say to her. So for example, she had been walking 2 miles a day despite being on hospice for a long time, probably like 9 months. And then a few months ago, she just got really sick, and she hasn't been able to leave the house since then. She left one time in a car, but she hasn't been able to walk since then, like go on her walks. And our neighbor who used to walk with us would constantly say like, oh, we're going to be walking soon, or the next time we go walking. And my mom would that would be in a text, and I would be with my mom in person, and she'd be like, she keeps saying that, and it just feels like a knife in my chest, because I know I'm not going to walk again. And the neighbor didn't mean anything by it, anything bad. She was trying to be encouraging. But at that point, it was really discouraging for my mom. And so that's when I learned, okay, I'm not going to say anything about you're going to walk again, because that doesn't feel good for her. And so, yeah, and I have made comments. I did make a comment of, I met someone who started walking 2 miles a day because my mom inspired him. And he was like, if this woman on hospice and on oxygen can walk 2 miles a day, I've got no excuse. So he started walking. And I told her that, thinking it would be really encouraging for her. And it made her upset. And she was like, yeah, but I can't walk anymore. I'm just a failure. And I'm like, you're not a failure. You've inspired someone. You're leaving a legacy. But she didn't see it that way. And it also just brings up, whatever we're going through, however challenging it is for us watching that person suffer, they're going through something really intense, if not significantly more intense. They are facing the end of their life. You know, they've got existential questions. They're battling. They have so much going on that we have no idea about, unless we've been in a similar situation and miraculously recovered. Then, so we have to be patient with them, and we have to understand that they are in so much pain. Not only are they in psychological, probably, turmoil and mental stress and emotional pain, but they're in physical pain. Like, my mom is in so much physical pain. And people, like, I get cranky if I have a cold. Right? Like, people get cranky when they have fevers. And my mom is, like, dealing with with the level of pain with an intensity of an extreme degree compared to a cold. And so just imagine being in physical pain, emotional turmoil, you feel guilty because you're going to leave your family, like all these things. It's so complex and so messy that we have to be patient with them. And you have to be patient with yourself. If you say the wrong thing, it's not your fault. You didn't know any better. You are trying your best. Your nervous system is probably shot too. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this because I keep crying and it's probably not encouraging for people, but whatever, I'm gonna share it anyway because it's real. So you're not always gonna know what to say. They're not gonna know what to say. Other people, meaning, aren't gonna know what to say. Your loved one may or may not know what they need. But here's another big thing. So, especially if this is happening when you're younger, but I think probably at any age when your parent gets sick or a loved one, is we kind of think we know it all. And we can look at someone from the outside and say, like, oh, they need to eat these foods. They need to take this herb. They need to take this supplement. They need to do whatever, 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 because I know so and so who cured cancer doing whatever, whatever, whatever. And a lot of times there's a lot of validity to that. I've met plenty of people who have said, oh, I knew someone who battled their terminal illness with this protocol. Has your mom tried this? Has your mom tried that? And I do a lot of research on nutrition and health and holistic healing. And I have tried over the years to share many a holistic health treatment. And sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. So if I've introduced so many things to my mom, or I've tried to, and sometimes she's open. There was one herb that I found in some research study about MAC, her disease, and she started taking the herb and it actually really helped her. It was a Chinese herb. We ordered it directly from China and it was super rare and exotic, and she got it and she said it really helped her. But there are other things that I've mentioned and she's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's snake oil or like whatever. I don't believe in that. And so you have to, I've found giving gentle suggestions work best, or just showing your curiosity for something. So for example, I came across a research article the other day that was talking about how good mushrooms are for lungs. Have you heard about that? And then either she'll be open to these mushrooms or she won't. And that's up to her. Things like, if, for example, your parent has diabetes, you might say, like, you really need to exercise. That's not going to encourage them or motivate them. You can give gentle suggestions. Like, I read an article that said that walking every day can really help obesity. And those are the kinds of things that I think inspire people. Because remember, your parents don't want to be parented by their children. It's really hard, from what I hear, that to have your adult children try to parent you and tell you what to do. And so I think as children, and if you're the one, if the person you have in mind is not your parent, in any case, no one wants to be told and bossed around by someone else telling them what to do. And at the end of the day, it is their body. They know what they need more than anyone else. So yes, give suggestions gently, but if they don't take your suggestions, don't take it personally. It can be frustrating if you know, like, I know physical exercise will benefit you, but if they're not doing it, it's their body. At the same time, there have been a lot of times when people have given suggestions to my mom and she's done them and it's made her worse or it's backfired, and she's like, I know my body. I cannot handle that. And so that's really important to keep in mind too. And sometimes people will get really pushy. So I was talking to this one woman who cured her cancer naturally, meaning she didn't have chemo or radiation. She just used holistic approaches and she quit sugar and all these things. And for my mom, one of her big struggles is she's lost a lot of weight and it's hard for her to eat. Just a fun fact, the way her lungs have moved because of her infection, it's literally moved her esophagus, so it's very painful to eat. And so it's really a challenge for her. But one of the things she really likes to eat is ice cream. She won't do protein smoothies as much as we try to convince her to. She won't do it, but she'll eat ice cream. And this one woman who cured her cancer naturally was like, she needs to stop eating sugar. She can't eat sugar. And again, she meant it in a good way. She was trying to be nice, and I agree. Sugar is not your friend. But if it's getting calories versus cutting out sugar, it's like, my mom needs calories. And this woman, granted, to be fair, has never met my mom. She didn't see how tiny she is. But no, I don't want my mom eating a bunch of sugar and refined food, processed food. But if it's the only thing she'll eat, she needs to eat. The infection needs calories to burn. And so at the end of the day, we have to respect that it is not our body. And it's not our life. Yes, our life is affected by it. And so that's why it can feel very frustrating when you're like, please do this. Please do it for me. And sometimes that works if you say, like, please do this for me. I need you to just try this just for me because I can't lose you and I need you to try. Sometimes that'll work. But a lot of times you just have to accept that it's their body, it's their life, and it's their decision. We cannot decide, and you would want the same respect if it were you. And so, yeah, so give suggestions when you can, but don't take it personally if they don't take your suggestions. And on that note of it being their body and their life, something that I'm a very spiritual person, and it's helped me get through this in so many ways, and it's still challenging. Like, as much as I want to say, like, I trust and that it's all happening for a reason, that's really hard to do when you're dealing with grief and pain and sadness and so much confusion and anxiety about the future. But one thing I've done is I've kind of changed my prayer. For a while, it was just praying that she gets better. And I still do that every day. Of course, I'm going to pray that she gets better and that she's not in so much pain. And I now pray that rather than me clinging to the hope that she's just going to magically get better and everything is going to be hunky dory and it's just going to go away and she's going to be around forever, I've learned to shift the prayer to, may she learn the lessons in this life that she needs to learn. Because at the end of the day, I love her, and my hope is that her soul evolves the way it's meant to. I can't control, sorry, I can't control ultimately what happens, her life and her death. I just can pray that it happens the way that nature intended and the way it's supposed to happen for her soul's highest good. It might be painful for me, but I got to deal with it because whatever's happening is for my highest good too, and I have to trust that. So that's been really helpful for me, is just shifting the prayer from may things work out the way that I want them to work out to may she learn the lessons in this lifetime that she needs to learn. May her soul evolve in this lifetime the way that it's meant to evolve. And that's been just a really powerful exercise in surrender and trusting that it's not about me. Yes, I'm a big part of this. Yes, it's a huge part of my life, and it's not my life. It is ultimately her life. So there is an element of surrender and just trusting God and trusting the universe and trusting that it's all working out the way that it's supposed to, even if we don't understand. And I have really seen a lot of blessings from it in terms of the amount of time I've gotten to spend with my mom, the amount of family reunions we've had. So since getting the 2-month diagnosis, we had a big family get together with all of her siblings and even her cousins. And then we took a international trip with my immediate family, and really, really beautiful experiences and things that we wouldn't necessarily have had the chance to do. And here's the other thing. Remember that someone else always has it worse too. And my mom will be the first to say this. She'll be sitting there in so much pain, and then she'll say, oh, it could be worse. I could be so-and-so who has dementia, or I could be my neighbor down the street who just lost their child. Like, she'll always think of a tragedy. And I don't think we should necessarily compare ourselves that much, but I do think comparison can be helpful when we're feeling down and we forget to be grateful for what we do have. It can be helpful to remember other people do have it worse. So I brought this up because sometimes a lot of people, lose their loved ones suddenly, tragically, and they don't have time to say goodbye. So I feel very fortunate that I have this time to say goodbye. Granted, it brings its own stresses. I'm in a state of chronic stress for years because I'm preparing for it, and that does take a toll, but I wouldn't trade it because I value being able to say the things to her that I may never have gotten the chance to say if if she went suddenly, and like being able to have conversations and hear things from her that, again, if you lose someone suddenly, you may not get. If you have lost someone suddenly, the blessing in that is that it was quick and you didn't have to deal with all of the before stuff. But I do consider myself very grateful and very fortunate to have this time. And I also have to remind myself, even though I feel like I'm pretty young for this to be happening, and there are so many things in my life that haven't happened yet that could have happened by my age. I really want my mom to be at my wedding. I want her to meet my children. And that hasn't, none of that has happened for me yet, even though I'm at an age where it very well could have happened for me by now, but it just hasn't. And that's been really hard for me to make peace with. But I have to remind myself that there are people who lose their moms when they're 3 years old. There are people who lose their moms when they're 16 years old. There are people that never knew their moms. And so what I can do for myself is think of all the things that she has been there for. She's been there for my high school graduation, my college graduation, my grad school graduation. She's seen me do so many cool things. I did a TEDx talk. She was there. Like I've had so much time with her, and other people don't get that either. So it's really easy to compare ourselves to people whose loved ones are not sick and to think, your mom is taking care of your baby. That must be really nice because I may never get that chance. And it's important to remember everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own battles, and don't resent anyone for having something that you don't or that you may not. Talking to myself here because it's so easy to fall into that trap and to resent other people, but I think it's really important just to remind ourselves, like, everyone has their plan and their story, and you never know what someone's dealing with behind closed doors either. And just reminds me of going back to the very first point of sometimes people don't know what to say. Gosh, I can't tell you how many times I've talked about my mom and someone will be like, oh, yeah, I get it. My grandmother, who's 95, had a cold last week. Or like, they'll start talking about their grandparents. And I get it. Like, grandparents are really important. But I haven't had grandparents for like 10 years. And so when someone compares their grandparent to my mother, I'm like, it's not the same. And I used to get really upset by it. Like, do not compare your 96-year-old grandma's cold with my 65-year-old mother's terminal illness. Like, it's just not the same. But again, release the resentment. If you're the person talking to someone whose loved one is dying, don't bring up your own situation until you've fully listened to theirs. Because, well, first I'll just say forgive the other person. They know not what they do, and they mean well. Because what happens is sometimes people bring up things in an attempt to relate. So they're trying to show you some empathy of like, oh yeah, I'm going through something similar. I'm dealing with my grandmother who's really sick. And sometimes it's very helpful and sometimes it's very not. And you don't know what the other person is going to need. But just try to be sensitive and listen to someone's full story before you start talking about your own story. Even if it's an attempt to relate, people want to be heard, and they can sometimes feel invalidated, like you're not validating their feelings if you're not listening to them fully and bringing up your own story instead. So this is not to say, I just brushed over that really quickly. This is not to say don't share about your own experiences with people who are sick, but just be really aware that a relationship someone has to their parent is probably very different from a relationship that anyone has to anyone else in life. And it's not wrong to show that you relate and to share your stories and experiences, but just make sure it's not a comparison thing. And I would never suggest saying, I understand, because you don't. Even if they lost their mother, if you lost your mother and this other person's losing their mother, like, sometimes it's okay. Like, I can kind of understand what you're going through, but I wouldn't say like I understand, because you don't. Everyone's situation is so different and unique. And I say that sometimes too, and I'm trying not to, but anyway. So the last thing I'll say is let others support you, because even though like it sounds like I'm saying no one knows what to say, and oftentimes they don't, and they may say the wrong thing, let people support you, even if that means you have to listen to them talk about their 95-year-old grandmother with a cold. Know that they're coming from a well-intentioned place. Hopefully they don't say that, and if they do, don't take it personally. And you can even say, and I had to tell my friend, I was like, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Honestly, I feel like it's very different from what I'm going through, so can we talk about those two things in two separate conversations? Because I didn't want it to feel like they were the same, because they weren't. But in any case, that friend was just trying to be there for me. And I've had to learn to let people be there for me. I've gone through phases where I've been very open about it, and then phases where I just like didn't want to talk about it. People would say, "How's your mom?" And I'd say, "I don't want to talk about it." Change the subject, next. And then other times where I would talk a lot about it. And I think it's normal to kind of ebb and flow. So don't feel like you have to talk about it all the time or that you can never talk about it. But I will say it feels so much lighter just knowing that there are people in your corner. And even if they don't know what to say, and they know they don't know what to say, and they know they're going to put their foot in their mouth, and you know that too, and you know you're probably going to snap at them. So here I am blaming all these people for not knowing what to say. I've said things to them and felt really bad about it. Been like, I don't want to talk about it. And then I'm like, okay, like chill, Trisha. Like I've snapped at people and felt really bad about it because wasn't my intention. But when you're sensitive and you're talking about something that's really taxing on your nervous system, it's easy to say things you don't necessarily mean. And it's not the time to practice be so intentional with every word you say. It's too much. It's draining. And I'm a speech coach, so my job is to tell people be intentional with what you're saying. But there's only so much you can do when your whole nervous system is shot. But anyway, just knowing that someone is willing to be there for you, even if you both just sit in silence, or maybe it's you have a conversation about something stupid. Like some of my best conversations, I had this friend who, she knows sometimes she says things that rub me the wrong way, and then I'll snap at her because they rub me the wrong way. Now our conversations have been really fun because we've just started talking about like dumb celebrity gossip or politics, or like, which is not super uplifting at the moment, but at least it's a distraction. And we talk about other things. We talk about the good things going on in her life, which, going back to the comparison thing, that was been really hard for me too, is ever since moving back to my small hometown, and I see my mom every day, and I'm still living my life, obviously, but a lot of factors of my life have been kind of put on hold because I'm prioritizing my mom. And so when I talk to people, they're like, oh yeah, I'm getting engaged, I'm getting married, I'm having kids, I'm starting a business, I have my own office, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. What are you up to? And I'm like, my mom didn't die today. And that's like the only update I have. And then like, I am doing other stuff, and I'm doing this YouTube channel and all that, but for a while, it made me stop talking on the phone to my friends because I was like, I just can't handle it. I can't handle that I don't have anything. Like, my job is not really going well. Like, it's really hard to date. I don't have a ton of friends here. Like, I just felt like my life was kind of revolved around something really sad. And so I didn't want to talk to people because I didn't want to have to answer their questions with, how's work going? Bad. How's this going? Not good. How's it? And just like, what are you up to? And then feeling so bad about my life because they're doing this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like over here just trying to get by. But eventually I realized I needed to stop comparing myself and trust we're all on our own timelines. And again, for as hard and as stressful and as difficult as the situation is, there's so much beauty in it. There really is. And it's taught me so much about unconditional love, because I do things, I have the opportunity to do things for my mom from a place of such selfless love. and sacrifice. And I don't resent her for it at all. And it's taught me what that means, what it really means to show up the best you can. And I'm not perfect. And there are plenty of times when our conversations aren't perfect and I snap at her or I lose my temper or lose my patience or whatever. But at the same time, I really have learned a lot about unconditional love. And I'm so grateful for this bond. And everyone's timeline is different. And one day, you know, all my friends that have all these great things happening in their lives now, they're going to have to deal with the loss of their parents at some point, and I'm going to be able to help them through it. And when I get all these fun, exciting things happening in my life, they'll be able to support me. So, I've been wanting to record this video for a very long time. I anticipated it would be a little more organized, and I anticipated that I wouldn't cry so much because I thought it would be more from like a here's what I've learned kind of standpoint, but it's not. This is just I had a rough morning. My mom had a rough morning, and so therefore it affected my day a little bit, and I was still able to. I'm recording an online course right now, and I was able to record one video for that, but I wasn't feeling it, and I was like, I want to use this energy for something, and so here I am recording this now. It's a really long video, so I hope you got something out of it, and if not, my goodness, was it cathartic for me just to talk through all of this, and I really, really hope that someone somewhere gets some value from what I've shared, and if you are going through this, or something similar, I would just ask that you let me know if I can support you, because I do feel like I've been given a very rare, not necessarily rare, but a unique opportunity to learn about life, because my mom is a miracle. Like, I could make a whole nother video about the number of miraculous healings she's had. Like, the fact that she's even here, every doctor looks at her chart and is like, what are you doing? Like, how are you here? And that's really cool too. It's taught me so much about the power of prayer and the power of love, the power of energy and intention and so many things. And her mindset, like, she is incredible. She'll be sitting there saying, like, I feel like razor blades are going through my lungs, and then she'll be like cooking a gourmet meal and she'll be talking about something 6 months from now, and then in the next breath she's talking about her funeral. So it's very confusing, but at the same time it has really showed me what willpower can do, because her mind over matter is insane. Like, it's amazing. So anyway, I feel like I've been put in a very unique position, and I know it's for a reason. And I know I'm going to share more and more about what I've learned. And it's tricky, it's confusing, because I'm like, I don't think I want to start a whole channel about dealing with a sick loved one, because honestly, I haven't sought out any resources about that. I probably should. I should probably go to therapy and stuff, but I want to help people with what I've learned, and I just haven't figured out exactly the best way to do that. So if you are in a situation that's similar, or you know someone who's in a similar situation, or you just resonated with this in some capacity, please tell me if you have ideas for how I can help people. Like, maybe I should volunteer at a hospital. I don't know, but I have a lot of insight from this, and I want to share it in a way that reaches the world. And I know that maybe everyone doesn't have like an hour to listen to these videos all the time, but I really appreciate you watching this or listening to this and sticking with me to the end. And I really sincerely hope that it helped you. And I thank you. Thank you so much, because it really helped me. This is probably not the way to grow on YouTube, but whatever. It's honest. So thank you so much. Please like, comment, share, and send me a personal email, powerfulandpoised@gmail.com, if you just want a virtual hug or a conversation, if you need it. And I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.